Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine, a prickle of unease in broad daylight? Like something's watching you from the shadows, something you can't quite see but can feel lurking just beyond your perception. Tonight, we're diving into the world of the mundane, the everyday, and turning it into something terrifying. These are stories rooted in reality, but twisted into something a little more sinister. Stories of neighbors with secrets buried beneath their homes, of forgotten children lost to time, and of vanishing passengers that leave behind more questions than answers. So, dim the lights, turn up the volume, and prepare to be pulled into the shadows, because tonight, the nightmare begins. Picture a quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows each other's names, where the air is filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and the sound of birds chirping. And kids play in the street until the sun goes down, their laughter echoing through the streets as they chase each other in the golden light of the evening. That's where Sarah lived, a curious teenager with a knack for finding trouble. She had an insatiable curiosity that often led her to places she probably shouldn't be. One sweltering summer afternoon, Sarah found herself drawn to the house across the street, a house shrouded in secrecy. It was the kind of house that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. It wasn't the house itself that unsettled her, but rather the basement. There was something about it that sent a chill down her spine. Always dark, always locked, with thick curtains drawn tight. It was as if the basement was hiding something that didn't want to be found. Days turned into weeks and Sarah's curiosity grew. She couldn't stop thinking about what might be hidden behind those thick curtains. Then, one day, opportunity presented itself. It was a moment she had been waiting for, a chance to finally uncover the mystery. Mr. Henderson, the owner, had left for work in a hurry, leaving his gate ajar. It was a rare oversight, one that Sarah couldn't ignore. A shiver of excitement ran down Sarah's spine. This was her chance. She felt a mix of fear and exhilaration as she prepared to explore the unknown. With a mix of trepidation and exhilaration, Sarah slipped through the gate and made her way towards the basement door. Her heart was pounding in her chest. To her surprise, it was unlocked. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, foreboding entrance. Taking a deep breath, she slowly pushed the door open. The sound of the creaking door echoed in the silence. The air inside was thick with the smell of mildew and dust. It was a smell that spoke of years of neglect and secrets long buried. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, the outline of a room began to emerge. Shadows danced on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. It was cluttered and chaotic, filled with old furniture and boxes. It looked like a place where forgotten things went to die, but something about the room felt off. There was an unsettling energy that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Suddenly, Sarah noticed a faint light emanating from the far corner. It was a small, almost imperceptible glow that beckoned her closer. As she cautiously made her way towards it, she realized it wasn't a light fixture, but a gap in the wall, concealed by a heavy tapestry. The tapestry was old and dusty, its colors faded with time. Heart pounding, Sarah gently pushed aside the tapestry, revealing a small hidden room. This room was different. It was like stepping into another world. It was meticulously organized, almost sterile, with bare concrete walls and a single, flickering light bulb. The contrast to the cluttered basement was stark, but it was the contents of the room that sent chills down Sarah's spine. There was something deeply unsettling about the personal belongings that were neatly arranged on the shelves. Personal belongings were neatly arranged on shelves, photographs, letters, a child's worn teddy bear. Each item seemed to tell a story of a life that had been hidden away. A floorboard creaked behind her and Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. She quickly ducked behind a frayed velvet curtain just as the basement door slammed shut. Her breath caught in her throat as she tried to remain as still as possible. Peeking through a rip in the fabric, Sarah watched in terror as Mr. Henderson entered the room, his face shrouded in shadow. He moved with a deliberate slowness that made her blood run cold. He was carrying a large canvas duffel bag, its weight evident in his strained movements. The bag seemed to hold something heavy, something important. As Mr. Henderson turned to leave, Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She prayed he wouldn't notice her hiding place. Mark, a young father, was ecstatic to move his family into their new home. It was a fresh start, a new chapter in their lives. It was a charming two-story house with a sprawling backyard, the perfect place to raise his two young children. The kids were already imagining all the adventures they would have in the vast, open space. The house had a warm, inviting atmosphere, filled with the promise of countless happy memories. Every room seemed to welcome them with open arms, except for the attic. Unlike the rest of the house, the attic was shrouded in an unsettling silence. It felt as though it belonged to a different world entirely. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, a stark contrast to the freshness of the rest of the house. It was as if time had forgotten this part of the home. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes, Mark noticed a faint scratching sound coming from above. It was so subtle that he almost dismissed it as his imagination. His curiosity piqued, he grabbed a flashlight and made his way towards the attic door. The sound seemed to beckon him, urging him to uncover its source. The steps creaked ominously under his weight, each groan of the wood adding to the eerie atmosphere. It felt like the house was warning him to turn back. As he pushed the attic door open, a gust of stale air hit him, carrying with it the scent of forgotten years. The darkness inside seemed to swallow the light from his flashlight. The scratching sound grew louder, but Mark couldn't pinpoint its source. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. He swept the beam of his flashlight across the cluttered attic, revealing old furniture and forgotten relics of the past. Shadows danced on the walls, creating an unsettling scene. That's when he noticed it. A small wooden door partially hidden behind a pile of old furniture. It was almost as if it was meant to stay hidden. It was unlike any door he'd seen in the house, with intricate carvings that seemed out of place in the otherwise plain attic. With a mix of trepidation and curiosity, Mark approached the door. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in the silent attic. The scratching sound was now incessant, coming from behind the door. It was as if something was desperately trying to get out. Taking a deep breath, Mark slowly turned the doorknob. The door creaked open, the sound piercing the silence like a scream. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dusty room. The air inside was even more oppressive, filled with a sense of abandonment. The whimpering had stopped, replaced by an oppressive stillness. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realized this wasn't just an ordinary room. It felt like stepping into a different era. It was a child's bedroom, frozen in time. Toys and books were scattered as if the child had just stepped out for a moment. A small, four-poster bed with faded floral sheets sat against one wall. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. A child-sized rocking horse stood frozen mid-gallop in the corner. It seemed to be waiting for its rider to return. Mark stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. Each step felt like an intrusion into a sacred space. The air was heavy with a palpable sadness. It was as if the room itself was mourning a loss. He ran his hand over the dusty surface of a small wooden desk. The dust clung to his fingers, a testament to the years of neglect. In the corner he noticed a small wooden chest, its lid slightly ajar. It seemed to be inviting him to look inside. As he knelt down to open it, a framed photograph slipped out, landing face down on the dusty floor. The sound echoed in the silent room. Mark picked it up, his breath catching in his throat as he recognized the little girl in the picture. She looked so familiar, yet he couldn't place her. She couldn't have been older than 5, with bright, laughing eyes and a gap-toothed grin. Her joy seemed to radiate from the photograph, a stark contrast to the sadness of the room. The city lights blurred into streaks of neon as Alex, a seasoned taxi driver, navigated the late-night streets. He had driven these roads countless times, each journey blending into the next, but tonight felt different. The rain hammered against the windshield, each drop distorting the reflection of the lone passenger in his rearview mirror. The rhythmic sound of the wipers added to the eerie atmosphere inside the cab. It was shaping up to be another routine fare, or so Alex thought. The rain-soaked streets were nearly empty, and the city seemed to be holding its breath. "Take me to the old lighthouse," the passenger rasped, his voice barely audible above the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers. There was something unsettling about his tone. Alex glanced at the meter, then back at the rearview mirror. The fare was ticking up, but that wasn't what concerned him. The passenger was shrouded in shadow, his face obscured by the darkness of the back seat. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "That's quite a distance, especially in this weather," Alex replied, his voice betraying a hint of caution. He hoped the passenger would reconsider. "The fare's no issue," the passenger said, his voice taking on an odd, hollow resonance. "Just get me there." The insistence in his tone was unnerving. Something in the passenger's tone made Alex uneasy. He had driven all sorts of people, but this one felt different, almost otherworldly. He had a strict no-questions-asked policy, but this fare felt different. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. As Alex pulled away from the curb, the rain intensified. It was as if the weather itself was warning him to turn back. The passenger remained silent, his presence a palpable weight in the back seat. The silence was deafening, filled with unspoken tension. The further they drove, the more uneasy Alex became. The city lights faded, replaced by the oppressive darkness of the countryside. The familiar city streets gave way to desolate back roads. The isolation was suffocating, and Alex's anxiety grew with each passing mile. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and vaguely sweet. It was an unsettling combination. Alex stole another glance at the rearview mirror. The passenger's face was still hidden, but the tension in the air was palpable. The passenger's face was still obscured, but for a fleeting moment, Alex thought he saw a pair of eyes glinting in the darkness. It sent a shiver down his spine. "Almost there," Alex muttered, more to himself than to the passenger. He couldn't wait for this ride to be over. The passenger didn't respond, but Alex could feel his gaze fixed on him. It was an unnerving sensation, like being watched by a predator. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the old lighthouse loomed into view. Its silhouette was stark against the stormy sky. The passenger directed Alex to a secluded spot at the edge of the cliff. The location was remote, adding to the sense of foreboding. As Alex brought the taxi to a stop, the passenger reached into his pocket and tossed a wad of bills onto the dashboard. The money seemed almost out of place in such a strange situation. "Keep the change," he said, his voice barely a whisper now. The words hung in the air, adding to the mystery of the night. Tonight we delved into the unsettling depths of the ordinary, where basements hold chilling secrets, attics whisper with forgotten tragedies, and vanishing passengers leave behind a trail of unanswered questions. These are the stories that linger long after the lights come on, the kind that make you question the shadows in your own home. Do you have a chilling encounter you'd like to share? A story that still sends shivers down your spine? Leave a comment below, and perhaps your tale will be featured in a future descent into the darkness. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next journey into the macabre. Until then, sleep tight, if you can.